Welcome back to Bisexual Killjoy, the place where we know bisexuality isn't a phase, it's a phenomenon. I'm Bailey, and this is...
Jace.
In today's episode, Monogamy Didn't Make Me Choose a Side, we're talking about, well, monogamy and what it means as bi plus people.
In the spirit of the season, we are returning to Bell Hooks' All About Love to be our guiding light in this conversation, particularly Chapter 10, Romance, Sweet Love.
Additionally, we're going to be bringing in some research to paint this broader picture of plurisexuality, relationships, and monogamy, and bi-plus attitudes towards it.
But before we get into all of that, Bailey, as our in-house monogamist, how would you define monogamy for our listeners?
You know, you asked me this question yesterday to think about, and it turned out to be a lot tougher than I thought it would be because you could ask 1,000 people to define monogamy for them and probably get 1,000 different answers.
Yeah.
But you would likely see the same themes arrive. For a lot of folks, it seems to be like, I have sex with one person. If you ask someone who's asexual, like that definition would change. So it's hard for me to say like monogamy is this thing. So monogamy isn't about like loving one person, though. We love our friends. We love our families. We love our pets. When we start getting prescriptive around loving one person at a time, we make ourselves vulnerable to being cut off from receiving love and then like relying on one person to be our everything. And if you find yourself in a position like that, girl, you go to therapy. You need more support systems than just one person to be your everything. That's way too much pressure. When you think about monogamy, what do you think about?
I mean, I do think that what you're bringing up is really, really important, that monogamy does not equal codependency. I am not a monogamous person, but I find that the biggest thing that I am wary of with my friends is, okay, I'm so glad that you found a boyfriend. I am so glad that you found a girlfriend. You're having the time of your life, but don't leave me behind. I miss you. I'm your friend. Sometimes they'll get siloed. Sometimes they'll break off all other connections. And that is kind of worrisome from the friend perspective because it's like, is this relationship codependent? Are you okay? Yeah.
I give folks in new relationships 6 months to be assholes before I'm starting to knock on the door. Because when I started dating Richie, someone's like, oh, you're in the lavender haze. I'm like, what's a lavender haze? And it's that intense beginning period where you're getting to know someone. And I will give a lot of grace for that. But once like 6 months have been checked off, I'm like, hello, where are you? Where have you been? Don't you love me?
We call that new relationship energy.
Yeah, exactly. But with that in mind, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsors, and then we're going to get into it. Hey there, Killjoys. We started a Patreon because we got a podcast, and like every other podcaster our age, gotta have a Patreon to pay our bills. Subscribe now. Get access to extra episodes, Substacks, I think, video content, and more. Okay, love you. Bye.
Are you being for real?
Kinda. We got it all. We have access to our private essays on Substack, as well as audio components with them so you can carry us around and listen to us on the bus. We also have access to our Discord, access to live events, a lot more access to me and Jace to tell us about your problems and why your boyfriend isn't very good and why you should leave him and how you should date people and how you should make your dinner and all these other things. What other things?
Our very exclusive book club where we actually mail you a book every quarter and we sit down to discuss, sponsored by your favorite professor, Jace.
We'll also send you a handwritten letter. How about that? We'll send you some neat stickers and some other stuff that I find on my travels, because I'm a pack rat, and I'd love to share my bounty with you.
So if you want first dibs on all the new things that are coming up, join us there.
Thanks for supporting Bisexual Killjoy, and back to the show. And we're back. Okay, so today we're talking about bi-plusness, monogamy. How do we see these things in concert with one another? But how does the wider public feel about bi-plus people and monogamy? Like, what are some things that come to mind?
I don't want to go through these again. Are we going to talk about how everyone thinks bi-plus people are cheaters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have to. We have a reputation for being fickle. We have a reputation for not knowing what we want and constantly, like, going out and just cheating. Cheating.
But we did not earn this reputation, and we didn't build it either. This was entirely projected by other people and their insecurities. How are we responsible for cis heterosexual insecurities projected onto bi people?
I think you and I have both seen the court of public opinion in social media, and it doesn't matter what we do, say, think, feel. The public has its opinion, and it influences how we are treated. You know, a monogamous bi-plus person's sexuality is often determined by the perceived gender of their partner. People see me and they think I'm straight because my partner looks like just like a cishet white dude. I know.
I'm going to start wearing shirts that just say, don't make assumptions about me.
Yeah.
You don't know me, dude.
You don't know me.
That's it. That's the shirt. You don't know me.
I like how you clever like, dude. You don't know me, dude.
Yeah, dude.
We're also not vectors of disease the way a lot of people perceive us to do. Like bi-plus people, not only are they cheating, they're just cheating all the time. They're out there getting venereal diseases and bringing them back to their good partner. Yeah, so you know how I feel about this. We could talk all about bi-plus stereotypes and have an episode on that, but this is about monogamy. This is about bi-plus people. Let's just get into it, right?
Yeah. So what does the data tell us about bi-plusness and monogamy?
I'm very glad you asked. Thank you. Now, with most things in plurisexuality, the area of relationship dynamics and bi-plus attitudes is kind of slim pickings, but there were some themes out there there were themes. The papers I pulled and are linked in the show notes, I think there are some consistencies that I'd like to discuss. But before we even start, there's a 1994 article, Hegemonic Discourse in an Oppositional Community, Lesbian Feminists and Bisexuality. And I think Amber Alt, who's the author, had a quote from their study that frames the prevailing attitudes towards bisexuality perfectly. And this is the quote, not me. When I think of bisexual, I think of bed hopping. They not only can't commit to being one or the other, i.e. straight or gay, but probably can't commit to whoever they're with, be it male or female. How could someone who wants to be in a long-term committed relationship still call themselves bisexual without some infidelity coming into the picture? 1994, how much has changed?
I want to engage in conversation, and I want to engage in this conversation in good faith. At the same time, I am so exhausted reading this because no, not much has changed. There is still the perspective that we're just flaky, period. Yeah. But also, I do have a question. What is so wrong with being flaky? Like, so what if a couple of people or a number of people, an abundance of people end up being flaky in relationships or in jobs or exploring hobbies? What's so wrong with somebody realizing that, hey, they don't really like it here and saying goodbye? I mean, obviously, be responsible, be nice, be kind, don't be an asshole. But what's so wrong about it?
It's not normal. It doesn't go with the social norm. And when you go against the social norm, you are untrustworthy. You are the enemy. You are the usurper, and you must be chastigated in public discourse. But for me, like 1994, you could have told me someone published that in a Vulture article last year, and I'd be like, oh, yeah. But wait, I see it on Threads every day.
Oh, yeah. I think that especially in discourse-heavy communities, it becomes a question of a lot of people aren't comfortable embracing fluidity. A lot of people aren't comfortable when you come out and you say, hey, I experience life in waves. I think that life is cyclical. And sure, I was confused back then. That is the nature of coming into your own identity. And I will eventually encounter some confusion in the future. And I look forward to resolving that. It's exciting. It's nice. It brings like the secret sauce to life. Mm-hmm. Sometimes folks who are really, really obsessed with not having secret sauce and just having really bland food the whole time are really upset about it.
Yes. Yes, they are. Very, very upset.
But what other themes do we see in the literature?
Okay, so fortunately, a lot of this work was done for me already in this 2014 report called Buying into Monogamy, Attitudes Toward Monogamy, and a Sample of Bisexual Identified Adults. Mark Rosenkrantz and Kerner explained that the literature, and again, this study is over 10 years ago, and we are due for a new report, so if you're a researcher listening to this and thinking, oh, what can I spend my time on? Here you go. It explored how bi-identified individuals negotiate non-monogamous relationships, relationship stability and composition in couples with one bi-identified and one straight-identified partner, and patterns of commitment through life phases. And what's interesting is that according to this report, bi-plus people are in relationships, and I'm quoting here, that are characterized by compassion, commitment, love, understanding, a desire to spend their lives with their partner, sexual satisfaction, and honest, open, and frequent communication about the needs and desires of their partners.
So it's like bi-plus people go into relationships with their eyes open because they know that there are options and they know what they want.
Yeah.
Isn't that The opposite of flaky?
I'm going in with all of the research and will change my opinion based on new facts that I am given. Yeah, isn't that interesting? I read that. I wasn't surprised. I'm in a queer relationship with another queer person, and we talk a lot. We talk so much about things that we want and need. And I'm just like, I'm not confused about anything.
And you're not confused because you've taken the time to think about it. Because it's not a given. It's not assumed. Even in I would say especially in romantic relationships that you're committed for the foreseeable future, talking about things, going into it with your eyes open, that is such a beautiful, wonderful experience.
Right. And what I don't understand is why bi plus people have a reputation for being fickle when the research really does suggest something so radically different. The Buying into Monogamy report pulls in a 2008 article, which is Female Bisexuality from Adolescence to Adulthood, results from a 10-year longitudinal study, that found that 60% of the participants were involved in relationships that lasted longer than 5 years, and 30% had either gotten married or participated in commitment ceremonies. And those numbers were from younger people, right? And I'd love to see a follow-up with the participants now. But how much different are bi plus commitment levels compared to the general public?
Tell me.
I don't know. I think if you did a side-by-side comparison, you would find something really similar to the amounts of commitment and maybe divorce rates, but the research needs to be done on that. So again, there you go. Second study idea, folks.
We need more data. But if these numbers exist, right, and you're telling me all about these articles that you have found, why do bi plus people keep having this reputation for being flaky and indecisive?
The research also seems to answer that. Because bi plus people are more likely to appreciate and understand sexual fluidity, as well as being open to negotiate and participate in alternative non-monogamous relationship styles, we're seen as undecided. But what that actually is a bunch of consenting adults checking in with their partners and responding to their needs. Yet broader society seems to conflate these questions and discussions with infidelity itself. So the actual quantitative study from the 2014 report was a fairly large online survey that looked at how bi-identified people feel about monogamy. Researchers were asking if folks saw monogamy as enhancing or as a sacrifice. And the main finding was that bi plus participants on average rated monogamy as more of a sacrifice than straight gay or lesbian participants. And before you go, I knew bisexuals were incapable of commitment, I'm going to need you to pump the brakes. What's interesting about that study is that it notes how normative people's actual relationship statuses looked. Most respondents were seriously dating, engaged, or married. The paper says that bi people expressed less supportive attitudes toward monogamy compared to other groups, despite reporting their own personal relationships as monogamous and, quote, traditional. That despite is doing a lot of work. Because what it points to is that there's a difference between how you feel about monogamy as a system and what you end up doing inside a culture that rewards monogamy with legitimacy. And for bi plus people, legitimacy is not an abstract concept. It's safety. It's being seen as a real partner. It's whether your love is treated as stable or suspicious. It's whether people decide you're serious enough to build a life with. So yeah, of course there could be a gap between attitude and behavior. And not because bi plus people are dishonest, but because relationships do not exist in a vacuum.
So it's almost like relationships are a kind of performance for the outside world. And don't forget the secret monogamous monosexual council.
Yes. The cabal of monogamists out there. But it's not performance in the sense that bi plus people are faking anything. Performance is in the sense of all the world's a stage, and that relationships, be they romantic or otherwise, are never just between two people. They're watched. If you're straight and monogamous, society hands you a gold star because that makes sense. And if you're gay and monogamous, you get a silver star, but you still get legibility. But if you're bi plus and monogamous, society kind of squints at you a little bit. Are you sure? Are you done experimenting? Are you secretly longing for something? Are you about to cheat? And so when a study says that bi plus people are more likely to view monogamy as a sacrifice, maybe that's not about sexual greed. Maybe that's about gender. Maybe that's about religion. Maybe that's about understanding what you're giving up socially, sexually, politically in order to be granted legitimacy. Let's not forget that the same study shows that most of its bi plus respondents were in long-term committed relationships. That doesn't contradict the attitude, it explains it. You can love your partner deeply, you can choose monogamy intentionally, which we will talk more about in the second half of this episode. You can be aware of the fact that the institution was never built with someone like you in mind. And so maybe the real question isn't, can bi plus people commit? Maybe the real question is, why does society only trust commitment when it looks uncomplicated, doesn't ask questions? And what does it mean to choose monogamy when you know it is a choice, an agreement between consenting adults? Because that's where this gets interesting. And we're going to talk about it with our friend Bo Hooks after a word from our sponsors.
Bisexual Killjoy is growing, friends.
What started as just a podcast has now blossomed into a whole community project.
We're not only dropping episodes, we've got culture commentary and hyper-personal essays just for you on our Substack. Get all your burning questions answered through our advice column, Give It To Me by Plus, and you can hang out with other Killjoys in our brand new Discord server.
The best part?
It's free to join.
But if you love the work we do and want to make sure we don't burn the fuck out, you can become a paid subscriber and you'll get sweet perks like bonus episodes, bonus posts, and exclusive discussion groups with your favorite Killjoys.
We'd love to have you in the mix.
Come join the community.
See you there.
And we're back.
So what you're saying, Bailey, is that bi plus people have a particular view of monogamy, but that view does not necessarily indicate what folks do in practice.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think what bi plus people do is that they have what's called like cognitive flexibility, where we think about things a little bit differently than folks in monogamous and monosexual relationships. We think about things as like something to negotiate, something to move through. Our lives will have ups and downs, and we rise to the occasions and we fall to the occasion. And honestly, like that's the superpower of being a bi plus person. Wouldn't you agree?
I mean, I do agree. And I think that what's really interesting that you brought up is that bi plus people can view monogamous entanglements, right? The process of engaging with them as a kind of sacrifice. But the difference here is that if you choose it, if it is entirely out of free will, then that's not a problem. That is actually affirming your commitment, isn't it?
I would say so. And if folks need an example, I'm allergic to avocados, okay? I'm really allergic to avocados, y'all. My partner stopped eating them because it makes me safe. Like, sure, giving up avocados, guacamole's great, avocados are great, but he did it because it's not important to me, it's important to him that I don't die. Like, that in itself is a sacrifice. And if he didn't want to be with me, he wouldn't have to make that sacrifice. Like, that's really basic what it is, but we navigate that life together without avocados. Stop trying to kill me when I come visit you, okay?
I am not trying to kill you. I just really love avocados.
That's why we're not in a committed monogamous relationship.
And I want to share my love for avocados with the world. And then I have to like pause and be like, right, Bailey's allergic to avocados. This is not love. Not love for Bailey.
Not love for Bailey. Yeah.
We can share other kinds of love.
Exactly. And I think that's what really the sacrifice is like I'm sacrificing things that I could have, like the possibilities I could have. But that's what happens when you choose a path. You sacrifice everything that isn't on that path. I mean, I do want to get into the gender politics of it all. Like in that particular report, women reported seeing monogamy as more of a sacrifice than men did. And that in itself is kind of like a really gendered idea. Like, what are women sacrificing for monogamy? What labor are they doing?
Yeah.
But that's derailing the whole conversation. So it's way more complicated than just like, I can't be with more than one person now.
Absolutely. It is more complicated. And it's important to recognize that it is not just the institution of monogamy that we're choosing, right? It is also the institution of marriage very, very often. And those two things can bring up very conflicting feelings in a person, whether you're bi plus or not.
Gang.
There is a sacrifice that happens. There's a sacrifice that happens when you choose to have kids. Life with sacrifice makes life more meaningful. It doesn't take away from who we are and our experiences. And on that note, we're going to chat a little bit more about Bell Hooks' perspective on romantic love.
Let's get into it.
Romantic love is so very often portrayed and commonly understood as a kind of song and dance, with one person assuming a leading role and the other adopting more of a follower role. Bell critiques this explicitly as she calls out how one does not simply, quote, fall in love, nor is love solely a feeling. She says, Even in non-heterosexual relationships, the paradigms of leader and follower often prevail, with one person assuming the role deemed feminine and another the designated masculine role. She highlights this explicitly to note that this whole song and dance is not exclusive to heterosexual couplings, nor to cis-het people, and I find that to be really, really, really important. Because as we've covered in so many episodes in our previous seasons, homonormativity is a thing. And the urge, the collective paradigm urge to conform to current structures, to perform the song and dance, it is big, it is huge, and very often we act on it unconsciously, which is why it's so important to unpack what it is that we're doing, how, why even.
I'm just nodding along in great affirmation. Nothing to add. Continue.
This is also a quote from the chapter that I love. She talks about how Peck builds upon Fromm's definition when he describes love as the will to nurture one's own or another's spiritual growth, adding, the desire to love is not itself love. Love is as love does. We do not have to love. We choose to love. And I do agree with Hook so very passionately on this one. There is no need for us to fall into love's elusive black box of a feeling. Love is a choice. I am particularly partial to the phrase, I walk into love, with my eyes wide open, choosing you every step of the way. If we are indeed to find a real true love that heals and transforms us, we must exercise agency throughout the journey. We must choose it every single step of the way. To demonstrate how profoundly I feel about this subject, when Anna and I were first dating, I wrote a poem to her to that same effect. And I think it ended with something along the lines of, I need not fall when I can walk slowly into love with you. Because it's a road. And you can choose it. And isn't that like so much more romantic?
Yeah.
Than something took me over and I had no control. And now I'm just like falling for you.
That's really sweet. And I love the idea of walking into love instead of falling into love. And honestly, I'm getting a tattoo that just says agency on my chest because that's what life requires. You know, when Richie and I started dating, we went on our second and or third date, was what we'd like to call it. He and I had finished dinner. We were in his car and we were going to see a show. And he started his car. It was going to drive us. I'm like, I'm sorry, were you not going to kiss me?
I love that.
And so we made out in his car. And then when we were done making out for a little bit, he's like, okay, so are you like polyamorous or monogamous? And I was like, I've been on the dating scene for a long time and no one has asked me that question so explicitly. And I was like, monogamous? And he said, cool. Would you like to be in an exclusive monogamous relationship with me? And I was like, I would like that. I would like that a lot. And then we made out some more and we did not go to that show is all I'm saying. So before you think it's too weird to talk about relationship dynamics and what I want, honey, if you don't ask, you don't get fed. So that's the tea. Thank you, agency.
But isn't that like so romantic? And you didn't go to the show.
We did not go to the show.
I also really love to think about romantic love as a gift, as the act of gifting oneself to another. But in order to take this approach, we must also be really, really clear on what it is that we are able to offer another. What is the gift that we are giving? Bell highlights that few of us evaluate a prospective partner with the same objectivity and clarity that we might use to select a household appliance or a car. I mean, I remember that I cackled on the bus when I heard this phrase because I'm like, that's tea. That's piping hot tea, Bell. Because yeah, how often do we settle? I would not settle for a shitty espresso machine. Why would I settle for somebody who is not willing to engage in what I really want to engage in with a partner? As she tells the tale of her understanding and coming to terms with what it is that she wants in a partner and what she wants to offer, she says, it was painful to face the discrepancy between what I wanted and what I had chosen to accept. And I mean,
yeah. You know, it's funny to read that few of us evaluate a prospective partner with the same objectivity and clarity that we might use to select a household appliance or a car, because did you ever write down like qualities you were looking for in a partner?
I did.
I did too, but only after a bunch of shitty dates.
I remember that I did it in my diary as a girl, and then I did it again as a therapy exercise with my very first therapist. And I remember feeling so upset about it. And I'm like, this is so unrealistic. And she looked at my list and she's like, it's not unrealistic. You just have high standards. And that's fine. And I'm like, no way.
I did my list. And Richie is everything on that list. It's a long list. The only thing he isn't is tall. And I just didn't specify taller than me because we are exactly the same height. And I am a tall person. But everything else he checked off on the list. And it was a good exercise when I finally was done being treated like garbage. It was like, oh, you can have all of these things on the list. There are billions of people out there that could match your list.
I'm a big advocate for keeping those standards high.
Especially if you are a person looking for monogamy and ostensibly want to spend your life with somebody, like with one person, why would you lower your standards? If you're lonely, I can understand that. Like you want to have a physical connection with someone, you can have a physical connection with someone. You also hang out with your friends. You can hang out with your family. You can build those platonic love bonds with other people so that when you finally do get in a relationship with someone, you're not trying to, I need everything from you all the time. Otherwise, I'm going to be unhappy. That's not sustainable for you or the person that you are trying to get everything from.
It's not fair.
It's not.
And this process also means approaching eroticism within romantic relationships with a clear vision. The best sex and the most satisfying sex are not the same.
I think it's important to define eroticism for the class because, like, I hear eroticism and I think erotic. I think like sexy erotic, but that's not always the case, right? Like, yes, eroticism can be sexy, but there's also something that is like exciting. Eroticism can mean sexual desire or excitement in some way.
Right, but when I think about eroticism, I think about passion, about a perfect, passionate, erotic attraction that can lead us to believe that we do not need the clarity in the relationship part. But that's really far from the truth. One thing does not substitute the other. Bell says, starting with clear definitions of love, feeling, intention, and will, I no longer enter relationships with the lack of awareness that leads me to make all bonds the site for repeating old patterns.
What a call out.
This is such a spicy chapter, precisely because Belle does not cut corners. She is reading you entirely. And for the most part, all she's saying is we need to be very, very clear and approach our relationships with our eyes open, or else. And the or else is what? The or else is that we're doomed to dissatisfaction. We're doomed to unhappiness. We're doomed to codependency, to repeating old patterns. And what she highlights the most is that we fail at romantic love when we have not learned the art of loving. It's as simple as that.
I was so gagged when I read that. I was like, ah! We fail at romantic love. Fail. Like, there was no ifs, ands, buts about it.
And just because a relationship ends doesn't mean that it has failed. Relationships can be beautiful and sometimes they end, and that is a-okay. And they have been respectful and beautiful and fulfilling. On the other hand, relationships can fail. That is a thing. They can crash and they can burn if the people involved refuse to approach love with their eyes open.
So is there things such as perfect love?
Belle goes into this in other chapters in the book that I think is really quite beautiful. But yes, I would say that Belle says yes, and I would say that I believe her. Perfect passion becomes perfect love when our passion gives us the courage to face reality, to embrace our true selves. And I think that now we're getting to the real meat of what romantic love is.
This idea of perfection in love does not say that we ourselves have to be perfect. And that was a really consoling part of this chapter for me. It was just like, oh, I am not a perfect person. I will never be a perfect person. But the practice of love can be perfect when you are doing these things, when you're having that courage. But yeah, let's talk about romantic love and why it's so interesting.
Oh, I love love. I get so excited. Romantic love is an experience, right? It brings us closer to our true selves as we grow closer to another's true self. It is a journey of self-discovery within the context of mutual recognition. In this way, true love is far from a fairy tale. Bell Hooks says, in actuality, true love thrives on the difficulties. The foundation of such love is the assumption that we want to grow and expand, to become more fully ourselves. There is no change that does not bring with it a feeling of challenge and loss. When we experience true love, it may feel as though our lives are in danger. We may feel threatened. This was such a moving passage for me because there is something scary about true love. A true, genuine, perfect love that is meant to bring you closer to yourself. Because what if I don't know my true self? What if I don't really like my true self? Am I supposed to bare my soul to this person that I feel so pulled, magnetized towards? What happens there? There is a challenge. And I think that true love asks us to rise to the challenge, to say, I am willing to grow. I am willing to learn. I am willing to become more myself as I accompany you on your journey to become more yourself.
Something I hear friends talk about when their relationships of many, many years fall apart and they're just so inconsolable and, we grew apart. And this isn't like a criticism of those relationships failing. Sometimes things fall apart. They need to. Things last a season. But oftentimes it's like you stopped growing together because the intention around the growth went away. To maintain love, to do the work of love, it requires consistency, intentionality, and honesty. And I was really happy to go on that journey with Hooks as I was reading this chapter.
Yeah. Love is work. And love is work in the most beautiful way possible. I'm going to deviate a little bit off topic, but I think that especially when it comes to marriage, that is probably a really big fear that comes up. It came up for me of like, what do you mean marriage is work? Is it hard? I'm scared. Does it mean that impossible things are going to rise to the challenge and I'm going to have to forgive unforgivable things? And no. Bell Hooks quotes John Wellwood as he says that a soul connection is a sacred alliance whose purpose is to help both partners discover and realize their deepest potentials. But this particularly struck with me, right? Because how many times have we fallen in love with potential? How many times have we become partners with people who we only see their potential? And she further cites Eric Butterworth, saying, true love is a peculiar kind of insight through which we see the wholeness which the person is without any delusion that the potential is a present reality. And that's when we go back to what does it mean that love is work? That love involves intentionality and purpose. It is because we're going into it with eyes open and we say, hey, this is the next chapter that we're embarking in, and I am going to challenge you to rise up, and I hope that you challenge me to rise up.
I love being challenged by my partner, my friends, people I love. I love it when they ask me, whether implicitly or explicitly, to be a better, stronger person, because I want to rise to that occasion. To be trusted with someone else's love and faith is a really big act, and I try to respond to those requests when and how I can. So I was like, Eric, what are we doing here? Stop flirting with me through this page.
The challenge that I love the most about love is when my important relationships challenge me to be kinder, challenge me to be more positive, challenge me to bring happiness and joy into the world. It brings a new light in me because, happiness is hard. Joy is hard. Finding fun things to be happy about, extending compassion to another is not necessarily an easy task. And those that love you will ask you to rise to the occasion, to be the change that you want to see in the world. And that's just so lovely.
Not my great grumpy cloud being like, well, not all of us are supposed to be sunshine. Some of us are supposed to be grumpy clouds. And I'm a grumpy cloud. That's okay. That's why you love me. That's why we complement one another.
We bring out the best in each other. And I think that that's really the important thing, because love, of course, is the only true antidote to fear. Bell says, as long as we are afraid to risk, we cannot know love. Hence the truism, love is letting go of fear.
And it is scary to love people. It is scary to let a person in and give them the opportunity to fail you or to disappoint you and to be hurt by that. But it's so brave when you're like, I'm going back into the fray. I'm not shutting myself off from the world. I believe in the goodness of people, and one of these days I'm going to be proved right.
I'm proved right all the the time. People are so good. People are so lovely when given the opportunity, I think.
Yeah, people are very strong and resilient. And to me, that's what translates to goodness. And that's what makes me continue to have faith in people despite the horrors. We're recording this on February 22nd. So the horrors that you are comparing yourself to today are different from the horrors that we are dealing with right now. But the fact that there are people still out there doing good work, delivering care to their communities, still loving, still connecting is just like so beautiful. Like that's what Hope Core is, right? Is this belief that things can get better because there are people out there doing good work. But my question becomes, how do we find true love?
That's such a juicy question. Belle says that everyone wants true love, even those who claim to have given up hope, but not everyone is ready. True love only appears when our hearts are ready, because to love fully and deeply puts us at risk. When we love, we are changed utterly. Hooks cites Merton as he says, love affects more than our thinking and our behavior toward those we love. It transforms our entire life. Genuine love is a personal revolution. Love takes your ideas, your desires, and your actions and welds them together in one experience and one living reality, which is a new you. And I think that that's how we embrace the risk that comes with love. We put the trust in ourselves. We put the trust in who we are. And we say, even if somebody does decide and chooses to disappoint me, even if I am disappointed by this love, even if I am hurt, I know that I love myself well enough. I know that I put the trust in myself well enough that I can recover and that I will remain soft, that I will remain loving through this process.
So thank you for bringing all of this together for us to talk about love, to talk about monogamy, how we all feel about it, what it means. It's a complicated, sticky subject, and you know that we like sticky subjects in this room. So as always, we have homework for you going off into the wide world. For our allies, please stop making assumptions about your bi+ friends and their relationship dynamics, unless you want to sleep with them. Their relationship dynamics aren't really much of your business. And for our bi+ listeners, look, talk to your partner, your partners about your needs, your desires, and what you want out of your relationship. At the end of the day, the conversation is over. You may wind right back at the start of the conversation, meaning that nothing about your relationship will change, but arriving at that conclusion as a unit, as an intentional conclusion, it will make you feel even more certain. It'll make you feel better about your relationship.
For our LGBTQ organizations, it's important that you host support groups for bi+ people in monogamous relationships. You have no idea how affirming those spaces really are. And before you ask, why do we also need to have a support group for bi+ poly people too? Yeah, actually. Yes. Get it done.
Thank you for tuning into Bisexual Killjoy, where we know that bisexuality isn't a phase, it is a phenomenon. To support us, you can share us with your friends, subscribe to our Substack, rate our podcast, preferably 5 stars, wherever you are listening to us right now. As always, we want to hear from you. We'd love to answer your questions in our advice column, Give It To Me Bi+. You can support us on Patreon to keep the work going and get access to our community Discord. And until we meet again, keep being a bisexual killjoy.
Stay bisexual and stay strong.